Greetings, Timothy here. The date is Friday, November 22nd, 2019. In these videos, we're discussing the nature of the times. I have been uploading these videos before each and every new or full moon for over the last 5 years. And though I don't prefer to begin my videos this way, if you learn or gain anything from this video, feel free to share it. And if you would like to be updated about any future video content, be sure to click the subscribe button. I'll be discussing more of why I'm giving this announcement towards the end of this video, but again, these videos are made possible by viewers and supporters such as yourself. Supporters of my Patreon page get additional exclusive video content as well as Q&A sessions and more on my Patreon page. I'll also be announcing a raffle where you can win an astrology reading from myself. You can win the Saturn and Deconditioning Workshop, or you can win several months subscription to my Patreon page. And I'll also be announcing a discount on astrology readings as well. So let's go ahead and jump into our discussion of what the heck's going on at this time. Now today, November 22nd, the sun has just entered the sign of Sagittarius, and we'll be discussing a new moon at 4 degrees of Sagittarius coming up next week, November 26th. Now Jupiter has been transiting his own sign of Sagittarius this entire year of 2019. In the next several days, Venus will conjoin Jupiter on the 24th and then enter the sign of Capricorn November 25th, soon followed by Jupiter on December 3rd, 2019, entering the sign of Capricorn, where he will remain through the year of 2020. Now, Sun in Sagittarius season, first of all, there is this sense of wind filling the boat's sails, and we'll be discussing this theme of surveying, plotting, and planning, this period of change, this overhaul going on from the early years of 2020 we'll be discussing in this and future videos. Now, the Sagittarius season, oftentimes correlated with the holiday season, is where we can get this, again, wind filling the boat's sails, a sense of magic, a sense of adventure, returning to that childhood sense of adventure. And oftentimes this feeling of the holiday season even supersedes the holidays themselves. Now, with Venus conjoining Jupiter on the 24th, maybe don't spend all of your money too soon on gifts or on my raffle, of course. But Venus is really getting filled up by Jupiter at this time. Again, this is an opportunity to really return to this sense of optimism, return to our heart, what we love, what fills us up, what gives us a sense of direction, some greater awareness as to our own heart, what we love, who we love, and how we can be truly centered in our own higher selves. Okay. This is what Sagittarius brings, is this bird's eye view perspective of life, the bigger nature, giving a sense of purpose and meaning to our life, a kind of moral as well as intuitive compass. And both Jupiter and Sagittarius has to do with natural laws, universal principles, that which is true everywhere and always. And this is, again, what gives us this compass, the sense of where we are, who we are, as well as that greater sense of goodness, that meaning as to what our truth is in life. Now, again, this last year, Jupiter's been in his own sign of Sagittarius throughout 2019, and he has been surveying, exploring, where is this greater adventure calling us to? How can we return to our higher selves, our individual truths? Or how can we return to that alignment with natural laws, universal principles, or simply nature itself? Okay, when we're seeing Jupiter on this Sagittarius Capricorn cusp, and as we're entering the roaring 2020s, as I'm excitingly calling this next decade, this can also be really waking us up to where we are in the bigger picture in terms of our world, in terms of human society, Capricorn, as it is related to nature, Sagittarius. And this is again where there can be a lot of illumination, a lot of awareness, and this can also be giving us a sense of where things are going, how we're going to be plotting this course from this point moving forward. So again, Venus comes up to Jupiter. There's this nice sweet kiss of optimism, that feeling of joy. And again, we don't want to take that so far gone that we lose ourselves in escapism or we lose that practical sense, because Venus then enters Capricorn and conjoins Saturn and Pluto December 11th to 13th. And this is when we may become more aware of our resources, our money, what we have, what we don't, and it's an opportunity for us to be quite practical and also striving to form a practical working sense of harmony in our commitments, in our relationships, the sense of we can do it together, we can go through these changes together, we can plan accordingly. Venus enters Capricorn on the 27th. Jupiter follows on the 3rd, and the surveying is over. It is time to set to work. Capricorn is not just dreaming about the future, but is actively building it. And so this is an energetic shift, particularly these next few months in the 2020. We're really going to get a sense of this shift, and we are getting a bit of a push into manifestation in three-dimensional reality, which is not just dreaming or believing, but actually getting down to the three-dimensional, the nitty-gritty details. It's time to get to work. We are molting the environment into a road, laying the gravel, laying the tar, laying the concrete, measuring what resources we have to use, measuring what limitations we have to be prepared for. Okay, it is what goes where, how much, and how many, practical. Jupiter in Capricorn is a structural vision. Okay, it's like we're going to build a skyscraper and we have the architecture. Jupiter is the designer, and it's actually manifesting in the sense of bringing the materials, laying the foundation, and beginning with this skeletal structure. Okay, the skeletal structure that we're going to begin filling in as we enter 2020 is this period of really laying a foundation. Okay, and again, we have the gift of Jupiter in Capricorn, which is a structural visionary, but it's really about making it work. The proof is in the pudding. What works and what doesn't is apparent. And again, this is leading us into building a foundation. This is going to take us through 2020 in many respects as well, with Jupiter currently being in a balsamic phase conjunction, both with Pluto and Saturn. And Jupiter will actually conjoin Saturn at the 1st degree of Aquarius at the very end of 2020. So, we are talking about some long-term planning here. That's Capricorn. It's like, how are we going to survive this turn of the human, wheel, turn of this century, as we are going through this global economic, governmental, cultural, national adjustment and shift? There's, again, this structural, practical planning that can also be quite long-term. Okay, where are we this year? Then where are we going next year? What is this long-term direction? And again, Jupiter and Capricorn can really be investing in that long-term path. And there is a bit of a winter pathway ahead of us, but in being prepared for winter, which is what Jupiter and Capricorn can excel at, this is a real gift of optimism in winter. If we dress appropriately, it feels like summertime in our winter clothing when we are prepared for it. The wisdom of Jupiter in Capricorn is that confidence, is that optimism that, life is not meant to be easy. It's not meant to be a cakewalk, but we have the power, the capability to create our joy, to create our bliss. Life does not give us bliss and joy. Life gives us suffering. It's our job to transform that suffering into happiness, into bliss, and Jupiter has that one-up perspective, that energy, that goal-oriented confidence that we can do it. We are strong enough, we are capable, we can survive this and any future winters as well. Now this next week, November 26, a new moon at 4 degrees of Sagittarius conjoined asteroid Pallas Athena. And asteroid Pallas Athena is that goddess of wisdom, so brilliant, so tuned into that lofty, big picture perspective, quite visionary. And Pallas Athena is like a Lady Justice type of figure, also quite passionate, quite righteous about fighting and defending her truth, her understanding of life. So Pallas Athena in Sagittarius is again that big picture intuition. It's like the spiritual sage, you know, the wise woman, the wise man, tuned into nature, tuned into those natural cycles, rhythms of life. And Pallas and Sag could also be the crusader, can also be quite political, and these are some politically charged months that we're entering. This is also a new moon in a trine to Chiron, and this also has a similarly charged crusading, take a stand, time to stand up, time to fight what's right, time to stand up on our soapbox, and time to stand up for the necessary healing at this time. Again, a part of what we're experiencing, both with Uranus in a semi-square to Neptune and this Sagittarius, Jupiter, and then Aquarius, area where these outer planets are transiting, is we're looking at the crisis of nature and humanity and our current societal foundation and how much it can last and how short-lived our world will be if we continue following along the paths that are already deeply ingrained. So this is also a waking up to this bigger picture, as well as a taking a stand for what is right, fighting for our truth. I think of Greta Thunberg, who's been all over the media, being an exemplary soul of the Pluto and Sagittarius generation, a generation of souls that have the generational intention and the capacity to bring us back to nature, these natural, universal laws, rhythms, and cycles. Okay. Now, this new moon is also semi-square to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So our vision of our truth, our higher self, is somewhat being challenged by, creatively challenged by the societal expectations that are ingrained, as well as how the world is hanging on by a thread and quickly changing. It's like, okay, how do we bring our truth, our connection to nature in this exciting world where there's so much change going on and where there's so much instability, particularly in traditional routes? And there's this need to be creative, to be innovative, to start to plan out how to do things differently. And there's a tremendous restlessness with this. Yeah, there can be a feeling of a fire lit under our ass. Uranus has a funny way of lighting that fire, and we're seeing an active Uranus this next couple of weeks, both with this new moon quincunx to Uranus, which can really bring that restlessness to such a degree we might even want a shortcut, like let's get to nature now, let's skip past the societal bullshit, let's skip past the practical, let's get that freedom, let's get that liberation. It's like, I'm sick of the old, I'm sick of the stagnant, it's imprisoning, and there can be a highly reactive, highly instinctual charge here. And we have to make sure that we are harnessing this energy like lightning. That's Uranus. I mean, this is electric lightning strike energy. Can fry us. It might send us too far too fast, like we're halfway moved across the country before we know what hit us, and then it's just like, wait a minute, what am I actually doing? So we have to harness that divine discontent, that lightning, that restlessness, because there is this need to seek out liberating paths, to find the new, but we can't prematurely settle. Otherwise, it can just be the easy tendency with Uranus is going too far, too fast. We hit the reset button, and we do not want to throw the baby out with the bath water. Mars is also opposite to Uranus this next week. On the 24th exact, Mars opposite to Uranus is very instinctual, reactive, and rebellious. Now, Mars has just entered the sign of Scorpio on November 19th and is going to remain there through the remainder of 2019 till January 8th. Mars in Scorpio is very passionate, very intense, and also very introverted in terms of exploring our inner desire systems. Mars in Scorpio is turned in on itself, so to explore and act on our deeper inner psyche, deeper instincts, deeper cravings, deeper desires. And we're exploring our inner power dynamics. We're exploring those unconscious reactive phobias, attractions, repulsions, and how we desire to be in control or need to be controlled, looking again at these power dynamics. And really, Mars in Scorpio looks to the very roots of the nature of desire. So we're exploring the inner wild woman, the inner wild man, the inner animal, the inner beast, the inner sex drive, the inner warrior, the inner protector. This is Mars. And we're exploring the depth of this nature. This is a part of the spiritual journey, believe it or not, I know. To unite that beast, animal nature, sexual drive with the rest of who we are. Mars in Scorpio has the evolutionary intention to align its own deeper cravings, desires, or sexual attractions in uniting with its own soul, to unite that energy of the kundalini, the snake, the sexual energy, with the nature of the soul. This is union, okay, uniting the masculine and the feminine within ourselves. This is also true intimacy, okay, true union, okay, true completion. And this is again what we're exploring in the most full spectrum, far out, going to the extremes is what Scorpio does. And through visiting the extremes, seeing those instinctual reactions or reactivities or rebellious power drives in ourselves, we can really learn a tremendous deal. Mars opposite to Uranus is very objective. We can really see that inner wild man or woman, beastly, instinctual nature, and like see the programming that's in it. Oh wow, look at these unconscious desires coming from past phobias or fears, or what was suppressed in the past, or past wounds or past traumas, or this deeper part of myself that I didn't even know was allowed or a part of who I am. And so it's just been kind of kept alone in the closet to kind of, take on its own freakish nature. And now we're looking at it. Wow, what's the history of this and what's taken place? And how can we reinvite that back into ourselves without running away or throwing the baby out with the bathwater or hitting the reset button or breaking it all down? This can be a very liberating, very awakening, objectively informing transit. And so, again, we're looking at these deeper natures, desire drives, instincts, as if it were a chemical reaction. And by taking this perspective, it's as if we can add or remove particular ingredients, and that changes the nature of the chemical reaction. It changes the nature of that solution, okay? So this is a time where we can break out of any prior sticky addictions, power complex, or older limiting patterns. And the way that we tend to wake up and break free is a little bit of that fire lit under our ass by Uranus, that divine discontent, that restlessness tends to wake us up to these limiting patterns. That way we can begin to experiment, pushing on the boundaries, again, adding or subtracting ingredients, and that changes the nature of our identity. It changes how we relate to our own sex, wild, instinctual nature. And then that becomes a core source of our own healing, our own evolution, and coming into this power of the soul to be vehicles of change, of transformation in extraordinarily productive and constructive ways in the world. So Mars in Scorpio now through January is really getting down into the deep end of our life, our human nature, and how we can really align with this incarnation. Okay, Mars has to do with carnal desires. We all incarnate because of our desires. By exploring our desires, we understand the reason for our incarnation, which ultimately unfolds into some form of evolutionary desire coming from our soul to continuously expand, develop, and grow into our own soul's potential. And that's a mystical, magical, mind-blowing journey, and as far as I can tell, the rabbit hole keeps getting deeper and deeper. Speaking of rabbit hole, Neptune just stationing direct. Let's see, November 26, 15 degrees, smack dab in the middle of his own sign of Pisces. Okay, Neptune stations direct the day of this new moon in Sagittarius, and there is a deeply existential feel with all of this. Okay, we got the animal drive, we've got the collective, we've got Jupiter entering Capricorn. We're entering this long-term planning phase, and it's, you know what, complex. And there's a lot of materials on many different dimensions that we can be penetrating, dissolving, and feeling in this type of existential type of way. Like, wow, life is wild, life is weird, life is surreal, life is like a dream. And it's incredible how all these things just line up sometimes. Like all of these things come together, and it's like the whole universe is conspiring for our evolutionary journey, and sometimes that doesn't seem like a whole lot of fun to our egos. It'd be a big difference between our egos, which is not a bad or negative thing, it's just our identification, versus where our life and our soul desires to take us. So it's like, wow, look at all of these levels and all of these dimensions and how interconnected and how interwound it all deeply is. There is both a profound beauty and horror to it all that we can be submerging into. It's as meaningful and artistically surreal as it is confusing when sometimes these boundaries are blurred. Again, I'm thinking of that Uranus semi-square to Neptune. It's like, where exactly do we go? And do we stay and do we go? And I talk about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which I'll be getting quite into. That's one of those dynamics that can really be coming up. Do we settle, or do we just like dig everything up from the ground up and, start with a clean slate? And that's where we can be going back and forth. Do I stay? Do I go? Where do I end? And where do they begin? Okay. Down the rabbit hole we go. This is a Neptune stationed direct in a grand trine with Mercury, who also just stationed direct. I spoke 30 minutes about Mercury stationing direct a few days ago for my Patreon subscribers, so we'll keep that exclusive. We'll keep something exclusive, something special. Thanks again for your support. And, there's this sensitivity to the complexity of life. Again, this depth, the depth of the human psyche, as well as our sensitivity to the collective. Like, there is a collective story of humanity. Where has humanity come from? What has been this story over the last few thousand years? How has that affected our parents and their generations? And how has that affected our world, our culture, which is what programmed us in childhood? And you know what? Our story, good, bad, and ugly, the gifts that we receive from our parents, the world, society, the wounds that we receive from our parents, world, and society, again, it's all up. It's all there. The beauty, the horror. There's also certainly a theme of processing emotional material, really understanding and seeing this life, this death, the theme of letting go, how letting go is a deeper part of love, it's a deeper part of life. We must let all of our lovers go. We must let all of these more topical surface level parts and things go in this deeper mystery of life that's continuously unfolding into deeper levels of who we are up until the day we die, when we enter this portal into the mystery with a capital M. So we're tuned into that mystery. We can be feeling that existential depth, and we can also be processing, releasing, grieving, mourning this deeper story, this deeper lifetime, this deeper connection and communion with those that we love, our friends, our families, and the collective human story, the generational karma, and just how deep it goes. Really tuning into that depth, that darkness, that collective emotional runoff as well, what the world has been running from or avoiding through this synthesized American dream and Western civilization. It's like what's beneath all of this is really being examined, really looked at this time. So my goodness, there's a tremendous amount of material up at this time, and I absolutely wish all the best to you through it. Now, I mentioned, I'm doing a raffle, I'm doing a discount. I'm going through my Saturn return this next January of 2020. I'm going through a huge amount of changes, adjustments in my own life in terms of how I'm going to be creating future content as well. And on top of it all, I have received feedback that my videos have not been getting to all my subscribers recently. There's speculation that this may be about a recent YouTube algorithm that is cutting down on alternative health-related materials. That's coincidentally happening while I'm in the alternative health world, largely addressing those issues in the alternative health world. So it's an in-between period for myself as well. Don't exactly know where things are going, but if I've heard people not receiving my videos recently and getting emails saying, where have you gone? I'm still here. So not exactly sure what's going on the surface, but I'm still available. Again, I'm going to be offering readings at a discount for holiday season. I'm also doing a raffle. Don't get addicted and spend all your money again. There's something about the excitement of uncertainty that really draws people to a raffle. They work out wonderfully. People get excited by them. It's enjoyable for me to do, but I also kind of feel the need just to point that out. So that's a little tiny sliver of what's going on in my own life, and I'll be sure to put some more personal videos out in the future just to give you all an update in terms of what's going on in my end, because there's a lot going on the inside at this particular time in my life, and how these future adjustments and restructuring will be taking place in terms of business and sharing and online presence as well, which I also look forward to taking things in different directions. So again, thanks to all viewers, supporters, subscribers, sharers. I wouldn't be doing any of this if it were not for you, so thank you so much, and I look forward to continued in sharing and connecting with like minds. So wishing all the best to yourself, all of your beloveds, and please do take care until next time.